Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Hooper. I'm from Hakko University in Japan, and today I'm going to be talking to you about one self-access language learning community that I studied. Okay, so today's presentation will have three sections. First, I'll give you some background. Then I'll discuss some of my findings. And then finally, we'll discuss what we can learn from this study. Okay, let's look at some background. So first of all, what is self-access language learning? Self-access language learning is providing students with a space outside of the classroom where they can access physical or digital resources, so books, computer programs, multimedia, and social resources, so opportunities to make friends, practice conversation with other peers, have access to learning advisors, etc. Okay, the setting for my study was a self-access center in a Japanese private university, and I focused specifically on one learning community. This learning community was student-run, student-managed, and was based on English conversation practice. They met once a week in the self-access center, and there were roughly 20 members on average. I spoke to 9 of those members and 1 former member, as well as 3 of the self-access center staff from my study. I collected data. It was an ethnographic case study over a 1-year period. I collected data from observation, interviews, language learning histories, and also document collection. And I analyzed it abductively. So abductively means moving backwards and forwards many times between data and theory in order to try and find a plausible explanation for what was happening. Okay, so I'd like today to talk to you about 2 of the community characteristics that I identified in my study. The first one is accessibility. The community focused very strongly upon fun and friendliness. You can see this word cloud on the left actually came from my study. Why did they focus on this so much? Well, it was partly due to their past experiences in other communities of practice in the self-access center. So many of the members had felt marginalized and excluded within another community within the self-access center that was focused on things like English only. It was very native centric. And also, yeah, quite elitist. Like many of the members had already very high proficiency. And the members of the LC that I studied felt kind of isolated and created the LC in response to these experiences. Linked to this was what I call the double-edged sword of belongingness. Now, we can all say that belongingness is probably a good thing, but what the members found was if their belongingness within the community became too strong, this created a wall that prevented other members from joining. They were, in essence, in fear of becoming the past community that they had rejected or they had felt marginalized from. So there was this balancing act. It was quite tricky. Another key characteristic of the community is balancing 2 different educational ideologies within Japan. So There's AGO, which is kind of a traditional exam-focused, grammar-heavy way of studying English. And then Eikaiwa, which is the kind of conversation-focused, more internationally oriented ideology, which unfortunately comes along often with things like native speakerism or English-only policies. And through their language learning histories, the LC members weren't wholly satisfied with either. So what they did was they created this kind of hybridized model, which included elements of both Eigo and Eikaiwa. Usually they're very separate, but within the autonomy they had in the Self-Access Center, they were able to create a response to this. So what can we learn from the LC? I think first and foremost, what the LC members did with their community was foreground the importance of emotional support in self-access environments. So self-access environments are really innovative and interesting, but they can also be very, very intimidating for members who are not accustomed to this manner of learning. Also things like English-only policies and things like elitism amongst learners, they experienced this firsthand, and they knew how crushing this could be for learners. So as a result, they really, really emphasized the importance of belonging, but also the importance of accessibility and support. Linked to this is the role of learners in self-access as potential barometers for institutional problems. Now, by barometers, I mean they were able to put their finger on problems that existed under the surface, in many cases far earlier than the self-access staff members did. So I think this speaks to the value of giving students more power, giving students more influence, and allowing them to contribute to a self-access environment by identifying and also foregrounding problems that may exist that teachers or other staff members may miss. So I see this as an exciting new potential role for students in the future in self-access. Thank you for listening. I look forward to hearing your questions.